Okay, hello everyone. This is Leo. The topic of today's discussion focuses on discrimination from the contemporary racial discrimination and some recent issues, such as sexual orientation discrimination. Because most of these yellow people in some places in the US, sometimes there's a kind of the racial discrimination. So is the issue of racial discrimination we will discuss next how the black people in New York have their own power and social status. So when we talk about it first, we will begin our discussion by looking at the following areas. The first one is how black slaves in New York and how black slaves in New Jersey come to be. The second one is how black abolished slavery and had their own land and status in society during the founding and development of the New York. The third one is how New York hadn't only black racial problems, but also serious inclusion problems such as the homosexuality during the time and in the modern era. Okay, so slavery in New Jersey began in the early 17th when Dutch colonists treated African slaves as labor to develop their colonies, and is under and enslaved Africans fought on both sides during the American Revolutionary War. The British Crown promised freedom to the slaves. And as time progressed, many northern states quickly passed the laws uh, to let the slaves be free after the war. But 1804 and in the smaller places, New Jersey, Africans were not emancipated until 1965. Although the law let the slaves be free, Africans at that time they were required to serve their enslaved mothers' children as indentured servants for a long time, until early adulthood as apprentices to their mothers' enslaved masters. And slavery existed in New York for about 125 years before it was truly be reduced. And there's a editor saying with the newspaper, he saying no longer such injustice was to be tolerated in the land of liberty. So in 1934, local Peter Johnson and Henry Fronten organized the New York Anti-Slavery Society to protest against the slavery, while local ministers and elders also joined them. In 1946, the number had dropped to less than 300, and the tide of the slavery began to turn. And after 14 years, all blacks in New York were free. Okay, so the time came to New York in the 19th century and 1921. There were already powerful black couriers that were the most famous and most powerful of the two eras. In those days, everyone fought in many wars, and many of them earned their own land and property, even become a qualified American businessman. Well, they served in New York. These were not even 1,000 few decades ago, and attitudes toward blacks had changed but not completed. So by by 1936, the censors had begun to separate the colored and non-colored populations, because before they just calculated the population without any colors. But I honestly don't quite understand to this day the purpose of this color distinction is what. Because in the factories at the time, both woman, man, and see is black, white can work in the same place, but at the time in society, black is no wears special skills. Most black people will do some kind of the truck drivers, cooks, blacksmith, and some manual laborers, just like that. Although there was already any slavery in the 19th centuries. So immediately after the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century, New York saw a very large black rights movement, and this movement influenced the generations of New York resistance who continue to pass this sense of black resistance to make a spiritual pillar of injustice for kings' descendants. There were many great men in the Black Rights Movement who brought the valuable advice to the people of the time without the presence of this man. New York blacks could have lived freely in New York, but it would have been difficult for them to have a treatment and rights that other non-colored people enjoyed in the short term. The purpose of movement is not fight for power over a city, over a community, but to use the protest or a speech to get fairer and more inclusive conditions for people. And in the late 1965, building on the movement generated by the National Black Labor Council, the New York Coordinating Committee, and the New York Community Alliance, and the Congress of Racial Equality, a series of organizations that have been inspiring and helping the Black community in New York. So there were many great people who excited will getting fair treatment for New York blacks as well as normal treatment in life. For example, Louis Person, her born in the Georgia in 1908 and moved to New York in 1932. The black population of New York in the 1930s was free from slavery and reason, but it was still not easy to find a job. So Louise worked hard for her job, but the black workers in society at the time was that if you didn't know them, you didn't know if they were good or bad person. So the lawyers decided to get involved in politics, and in 1954, she became involved in the city's development and campaigning, and she spent the rest of her life not only giving money, time, and encouragement to the black resistance of New York, though through her own means taking advantage of the lack of attention that some of the people at the city hall were giving to the requests of black people. And she was outspoken in saying, I don't care how many tanks, how many guns, how many K9 dolls you get. I don't care what the situation is unless you plan to kill every black woman, man, and child in this city. It will not work. We must have horse. She has worked too hard for the horsing of black resistance and the proper treatment with Louis, whose phone has been cut off and whose heating system has been sabotaged. So She has worked too hard to make black reform a success and has gotten the result. As the black race become more tolerated and valued, more groups continued to speak out. Ghana. Ghana, African American, is murdered in Newark, and many of the LGBT hatred in the hearts of those who hurt her. Many people in Newark may accept the existence of gays and lesbians, but it will take a lot of intellectual effort to make them more equitable and better treated. In this city, the Newark gay community center was already going to be built to house this small group, and the news first tasted so quickly about the murder. They wrote on the story that gays and lesbians in Newark were constrained by their environment, and in the sense that public opinion was also very bad for Newark. So people should be more respectful of groups that are different because of the development of a city and the inclusiveness of the world. And there's a person who is named Eric Morgan. He is murdered, and who is protected the groups of the LGBTs. So hopefully, neither racial nor gender discrimination should confuse the people of today. Thank you for watching. This is Leo's speech.